"I don't talk much, sir, but I can bake," until the lonely cowboy whispered, "I picked you as my wife." She did not talk much. In fact, most people in the town believed she was shy by nature, or maybe slow to understand. Some even thought she was proud. But the truth was simpler and heavier. Life had taught her that silence was safer than speaking. Words had never brought her comfort, only trouble, so she learned to live without them. She lived in a small rural town where everyone knew everyone else's business. The town was not cruel, but it was careless. People greeted each other quickly, talked loudly, laughed openly, and moved on just as fast. In such a place, a quiet person often disappeared without anyone noticing. She lived with her aunt in a small old house at the edge of the town. The roof leaked during heavy rain, and the wooden floor made soft sounds at night, but it was still a home. Her aunt was kind but tired, worn down by years of work and responsibility. They did not talk much either. Their relationship was built on routine, shared meals, shared work, shared silence. Every morning before sunrise she woke up. While the town still slept, she tied her hair back, washed her hands, and began her favorite work, baking. The kitchen was small, but it was the only place where she felt fully herself. The smell of flour, warm milk, and yeast filled the air. Her hands moved with confidence, shaping dough as if it understood her touch. Baking was the one language she spoke fluently. When the bread went into the oven, she waited patiently. She never rushed. She believed good things needed time. As the bread baked, warmth filled the room, and for a short while, the heaviness in her chest eased. In those moments, she was not lonely. She was useful. She was enough. Later in the morning, she carried baskets of bread and simple cakes to the market stall. The market was always noisy, vendors shouting prices, customers arguing, children running between stalls. She stood behind it, eyes lowered, hands folded. People came, bought bread, praised the taste, paid, and left. Some smiled politely. Some didn't look at her at all. "Your bread is very good," people often said. She nodded in response. Sometimes she whispered, "Thank you," but many times she didn't. Not because she was rude, because her voice felt strange, like something unused. There were days when people talked over her head, discussing her as if she wasn't standing there. "She doesn't talk much, does she? But she bakes well." Yes, that's all that matters. Silence did not mean deafness. Each comment settled quietly inside her, stacking one on top of the other. She never showed hurt on her face, but inside, she wondered if her life would always be reduced to one skill, one sentence. Still, she returned every day, because baking gave her purpose, and purpose gave her strength. In the evenings when the market closed, she cleaned the stall carefully. She stacked empty baskets, wiped the wooden table, and carried everything back home. The walk was long, but she didn't mind. The road was quiet at that hour. The sky often glowed with soft colors, and the air smelled of dust and grass. Those walks were her time to think. Sometimes she thought about her past. She had learned early that speaking did not always bring kindness. As a child, she had been ignored when she talked, corrected when she spoke too slowly, and laughed at when her words came out wrong. Over time, she stopped trying. Silence became her shield. But deep inside, she still carried dreams. Small, fragile ones. A home that felt warm. A life where she was not invisible. A place where her quiet nature was not a weakness. She did not believe those dreams would come true. They were just thoughts she allowed herself on long walks. One ordinary morning, something slightly different happened. The market was busy, and she was arranging fresh bread when she noticed a shadow fall across the stall. She looked up briefly and saw a man standing there. He was tall, wearing worn boots and a simple hat. His clothes were dusty, as if he had traveled far. He did not speak immediately. He just looked at the bread. He waited. Finally, he pointed to a loaf. "I'll take this," he said. His voice was calm, not loud like the others. She wrapped the bread carefully and handed it to him. Their fingers almost touched, and she pulled her hand back quickly out of habit. He paid and nodded once in thanks. "Smells good," he added before turning away. That was all, a simple exchange. Yet, something about it stayed with her. The next day, he came again, and the day after that. He always chose the same bread. He never rushed. He never spoke more than necessary. Sometimes he nodded. Sometimes he said thank you. He never asked her why she was quiet. He never looked impatient. She noticed these things, though she never showed it. People in the market began to notice him, too. They whispered about the cowboy who had come to town, about his ranch far from the village, about how he lived alone. She heard these stories the way she heard everything else. from a distance. She did not imagine he would notice her beyond the bread. But on one morning, as she handed him the loaf, he paused. "You bake this yourself?" he asked. She nodded. "It's good," he said simply. No extra words, no fake praise. Something warm settled in her chest, unexpected and quiet. She watched him walk away, his step steady, his back straight. For reasons she did not understand, the market felt less noisy that day. She went on with her work, unaware that this small, ordinary beginning was quietly opening a door she never believed would exist. For now she was still the quiet girl at the stall, still the one who didn't talk much, still known only for her bread. The cowboy's name slowly became known in the town, though he never announced it himself. People talked as they always did. They said he owned a ranch far beyond the open fields, where the land stretched wide and quiet. They said he worked from sunrise to sunset and rarely came into town unless necessary. Some said he had lost his family long ago, others said he simply preferred being alone. No one truly knew, because he never shared much. What was clear was this: he was different. He did not laugh loudly with the men near the supply shops. He did not sit around telling stories. He bought what he needed, finished his work, and left. Yet every morning now he stopped at the bread stall. At first she thought it was coincidence. The town did not have many good bakers, after all. But days turned into weeks, and still he came. Always at the same time. Always calm. Always choosing bread baked by her hands. She began to prepare his loaf without thinking. She set aside the best one, still warm, wrapped carefully so it would stay soft longer. She never told herself why she did this. It just felt right. She noticed small things about him. How he waited patiently while she wrapped the bread. How he stepped slightly aside so others could pass. How his eyes were tired, not sad, just used to long days and quiet nights. One morning, rain poured heavily and the market was nearly empty. She stood under the old cloth covering, worried her bread would get damp. Then she saw him walking toward the stall, hat pulled low, clothes darkened by rain. "You're open even in this weather?" he asked. She nodded. "That's good," he said. Not many people would. As he turned to leave, he stopped. "You don't talk much," he said, not as a question, not as a judgment. Her body stiffened for a moment. She lowered her eyes. "That's okay," he added quickly. "Some people speak better through their work." He was not smiling, but his expression was gentle. For a brief second, she felt something unfamiliar, understood. After that day, his presence no longer felt distant. It felt steady. Sometimes he stayed a little longer at the stall, not close enough to make her nervous, but near enough that she noticed. He helped lift a heavy basket once without being asked. Another time, he fixed a loose wooden plank on the stall table, saying nothing, just doing it. She thanked him with a soft nod. Words were still hard, but gestures felt easier. The town watched with curiosity. Some women whispered. Some men teased quietly. She ignored it all. She had lived her life being watched and talked about. This was no different. But inside, something was changing. She began to look forward to mornings more than before. She woke up earlier, checked the oven more carefully, and felt a small spark of excitement she tried not to name. She told herself it was just habit. Just working. The cowboy, too, found himself adjusting his routine. He planned his supply runs so they ended near the market at the right time. He told himself he simply liked the bread. But deep down, he knew it was more than that. The stall was quiet in a way his ranch never was. The silence there was shared, not empty. He could stand beside her without feeling pressure to perform, to explain, to be anything other than what he was. One morning while she arranged cakes, he spoke again. "You live nearby?" he asked. "With my aunt," she replied quietly, surprising herself. He nodded. "She's lucky." The simple sentence stayed with her all day. Another time he told her about the weather on the plains, how the wind changed direction suddenly, how animals sensed storms before humans did. He spoke slowly, choosing his words carefully, as if he didn't want to overwhelm her. She listened. She always listened. She did not interrupt. And for the first time in years, someone noticed that about her, not as a weakness, but as a gift. Weeks passed like this. No big moments, no loud promises, just small, steady interactions that slowly built trust. One afternoon, the market closed early. She was packing up when he appeared again. "Do you need help carrying this?" he asked, pointing to the baskets. She hesitated, then nodded. They walked side by side down the road. Silence between them was comfortable. Birds flew overhead. The sun was soft, not harsh. "You don't have to talk," he said suddenly. "I don't mind quiet." She really looked at him this time. "I like baking," she said, voice low but steady. It's easier than talking, he smiled then. Not wide, not dramatic, but real. Everyone has their way, he said. Yours makes good bread. When they reached her house, he placed the baskets down gently. Thank you, she said. He tipped his hat and walked away. That night, she lay awake longer than usual. Her thoughts were calm, not heavy. She replayed moments in her mind, not searching for mistakes, not worrying about words she didn't say. For the first time, she didn't feel the need to change herself. Far away, on his ranch, the cowboy sat alone by a small fire. He thought about the quiet girl with flour on her hands and patience in her eyes. He realized something slowly, carefully. He did not feel lonely when he stood beside her, and that realization stayed with him long after the fire burned low. Days continued to pass, and the quiet rhythm between them grew stronger without either of them trying to force it. Nothing dramatic happened. No sudden changes. Just small moments, steady and real, like footsteps on a familiar path. The girl continued her routine. She woke before sunrise, baked bread, and walked to the market, but now her mornings felt lighter. She no longer felt like she was walking alone into a noisy world that did not notice her. Somewhere between kneading dough and arranging loaves, she knew he would come. And he did. Every day, almost without fail, the cowboy appeared. Sometimes earlier, sometimes later, depending on his work. But he always came. If the market was crowded, he waited patiently at the side until it was his turn. If it was quiet, he stood near the stall, hands resting calmly, eyes observing without pressure. They began to share small habits. She saved a loaf for him, the one with the best shape and softest crust. He noticed and never questioned it. He paid the same amount every time, even when she accidentally gave him extra. He never tried to bargain. He respected her work too much for that. One morning the oven burned hotter than usual, and a batch of bread came out darker than she liked. She felt a familiar wave of disappointment. She separated the loaves, placing the better ones forward, keeping the rest aside. When he arrived, she hesitated, then handed him a loaf from the side. It's not perfect, she said quietly. He looked at the bread, then at her. It doesn't have to be, he replied. Neither do people. She nodded, feeling something ease inside her chest. Slowly, she began to speak more. Not much, just a sentence here and there. Short replies. Simple truths. And each time she spoke, he listened, like her words mattered. He never interrupted. Never corrected her. Never filled the silence when she paused. He gave her time, and that was something she had never been given before. In return, he began to share more of himself. He talked about his ranch, the wide land, the early mornings, the work that never truly ended, fixing fences under the sun, caring for animals, and watching the sky change colors at dusk. His voice stayed calm, even when his stories carried weight. She could hear loneliness in his words, even when he did not name it. You don't get tired of being alone? She asked one day, surprising both of them. He thought for a moment. Sometimes, he said, but quiet is better than noise without meaning. She understood that more than she could explain. People noticed how often he stood near her stall. Some whispered kindly. Others judged. A few tried to talk to her about him, asking questions she did not know how to answer. Is he courting you? One woman asked. She only smiled politely and returned to her work. She did not know what to call what was happening. She only knew how it felt. Safe, steady, real. A delivery had arrived late, and people crowded the stalls. She struggled to keep up, her hands moving quickly, her heart racing slightly. Without saying a word, the cowboy stepped closer and began helping. He handed bread to customers, took payments, and kept the line moving. He followed her lead, careful not to overstep. When things finally slowed down, she looked at him, eyes wide. You didn't have to, she said. I wanted to, he replied simply. After the market closed, they sat for a moment on a low wooden bench nearby. The sun was warm, and the noise had faded. You trust people easily, she said softly. He shook his head. No, but I trust you. The words stayed between them, heavy and honest. From that day on, trust became the foundation of everything they shared. She trusted him to respect her silence. He trusted her to listen without judgment. They did not promise anything. They did not name feelings. They let things grow at their own pace. One evening, rain clouds gathered suddenly. She was still at the stall when the first drops fell. Panic rose in her chest as she tried to cover everything. Then she saw him running toward her, carrying a large cloth. Together they covered the stall, their hands moving in quiet teamwork. Rain poured around them, but they laughed softly, not loudly, just a shared breath of relief. For the first time in a long while, she laughed. It surprised her. He noticed but did not comment. He just smiled, as if he had been waiting for that sound. As weeks turned into months, she found herself changing in small ways. She stood a little straighter. She met people's eyes more often. She spoke when she felt ready, not when she felt forced. And he noticed every change. "You seem lighter," he said one morning. "I feel seen," she replied after a pause. That answer stayed with him. One late afternoon, when the market was nearly empty, he lingered longer than usual. She packed her things slowly, aware of his presence. "I was wondering," he said carefully, "would you like to see the ranch someday?" Her heart beat faster. She looked down at her hands, then nodded. "Yes," she said. It was the longest answer she had given him. He smiled, not because she agreed, but because she trusted him enough to say yes. That night, she lay awake, listening to the quiet of her home. Her thoughts were no longer heavy with fear. They were filled with gentle curiosity about what might come next. Far away, under a wide-open sky, the cowboy stood outside his home and looked toward the distant lights of the town. For the first time in years, the land around him did not feel empty. He realized something important. The strongest bonds are not built with loud words or fast promises. They are built in silence, patience, and shared understanding. The day she was supposed to visit the ranch arrived quietly, without any special sign. The morning looked like every other morning. She woke before sunrise, baked bread, and prepared for the market, but inside her heart felt different. It beat faster, not with fear, but with something close to hope. She told her aunt she would return later that evening. Her aunt looked at her for a moment, noticing the slight change in her voice, the way her eyes did not drop as quickly as before. "Be careful," her aunt said gently. She nodded. That was enough. At the market, the cowboy arrived earlier than usual. He stood a little straighter, as if he had thought carefully about this day. When she handed him the bread, he did not take it immediately. "Are you still willing?" he asked quietly. She took a breath. "Yes." They closed the stall together, something that had slowly become normal. Then they walked toward his horse and wagon waiting at the edge of town. The town watched, of course. Some people stared openly, some whispered. She felt their eyes, but for once they did not feel heavy. The ride to the ranch was long and quiet. The road stretched wide, surrounded by open land and tall grass moving gently in the wind. The sky felt bigger the farther they went. She sat carefully, hands folded, taking in everything around her. "You don't have to talk," he said again, as if reminding her and himself. "I know," she replied. When they arrived, she was surprised by the simplicity of the place. The ranch was not grand. It was clean, well-kept, and honest. A small house stood near a wide field. Fences were strong. Everything looked cared for. "This is my life," he said. "Nothing fancy. I like it," she said honestly. He showed her around slowly. The animals, the storage room, the place where he fixed tools. He spoke calmly, explaining things as if he wanted her to understand, not to impress her. Then he took her into the house. Inside, it was quiet and plain. One table, a few chairs, a small kitchen. Everything was neat but empty of warmth. Her eyes rested on the kitchen. "You bake here?" she asked. "Sometimes," he said, "not very well." She smiled softly. He watched her as she moved, touching the counter lightly, imagining something without saying it. They sat at the table, and he poured water for both of them. For a while, neither spoke. The silence felt deeper here, heavier, but not uncomfortable. Finally, he spoke. "I've lived alone a long time," he said. "I got used to it, but getting used to something doesn't mean it's right." She listened, her hands resting in her lap. "I don't need a loud house," he continued. "I don't need many words. I need peace. I need someone who stays, someone who understands quiet." Her chest tightened. She understood every word. "I see how you live," he said gently. "You don't ask for attention. You give care without being asked. That matters." She swallowed. Speaking felt hard, but silence felt heavier. "I don't talk much," she said slowly. "People don't always understand me." That was the moment something changed. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the land. She could feel his thoughts moving, settling. Then he turned back to her. "I won't rush you," he said, "but I need to be honest. I picked you as my wife." The words were quiet, simple, not dramatic, not forced. She froze. The room felt still. He did not move closer. He did not reach for her. He just stood there, giving her space. I don't expect an answer today, he added. I just didn't want to hide what I feel. Her mind filled with questions, fears, and memories of a life where she had always been overlooked. She stood slowly, her legs unsteady. I've never been chosen, she said honestly. I know, he replied. That's why I'm saying it. She asked to leave shortly after. Not because she was upset, but because she needed time. He respected that without question. The ride back was quiet again. This time, the silence was heavy with meaning. That night, she did not sleep much. She replayed his words again and again. Not the idea of marriage, but the word picked, chosen. Seen. Her aunt noticed her restlessness. Something happened, her aunt said gently. She nodded. Someone sees me. Her aunt smiled softly. Then listen to your heart. The cowboy did not pressure her. He still came to the market, still bought bread, still treated her the same. If anything, he gave her more space, not less. That patience told her more than words ever could. She watched him carefully, how he spoke to others, how he worked, how he never tried to change her. And slowly her fear softened. One morning she handed him his bread and spoke before fear could stop her. I'm scared, she said. So am I, he replied. She looked up. But I don't want to be invisible anymore. He nodded. You won't be. Not with me. That was her answer, even if she didn't say yes yet. But in her heart, something had already decided. The quiet girl who once believed she would live unseen had been chosen, not for her voice, not for her past, but for who she truly was. And that truth stayed with her, steady and warm, like bread fresh from the oven, waiting for the right moment to be shared. The answer did not come in one sudden moment. It came slowly, the way her life had always moved. Days passed after his quiet confession, and she let herself feel everything without rushing. Fear, hope, doubt, warmth, all of it came and went like waves. And through it all, one thing stayed the same. He never pushed her. He still came to the market, still waited patiently, still took the bread she offered with the same calm respect. Nothing about him changed, and that steadiness helped her breathe. She realized something important during those days. If he had tried to hurry her, she would have pulled away. But because he trusted her time, she found herself moving closer. One morning, as she baked, she imagined the ranch kitchen again. The empty shelves, the plain table. For the first time, the thought did not feel heavy. It felt like space where warmth could grow. She told her aunt everything that evening. Not in long sentences, not with perfect words, but honestly, he listens. He doesn't ask me to change. Then the question is simple, she said. Do you feel safe with him? Then she nodded. Yes. Do you feel seen? She nodded again, tears filling her eyes. Yes. Her aunt smiled. Then you already know your answer. When he came for his bread, she did not hand it to him right away. Can we talk? She asked softly. He nodded immediately. Of course. They walked a short distance away from the crowd, standing near the quiet edge of the market. Her heart beat fast, but she kept going. I don't have much to offer, she said. I'm quiet. I like simple things. I bake. That's who I am. That's who I chose, he replied gently. She looked up at him. Then, yes. He did not smile widely. He did not raise his voice. He simply closed his eyes for a moment, as if thanking the world quietly. Yes, he repeated, making sure he heard her right. Yes, she said again, steadier this time. They did not celebrate loudly. There were no sudden plans or big announcements. They agreed to take things one step at a time. The town learned slowly, through small signs, the way he stood closer to her stall, the way she walked beside him instead of behind. Some people were surprised. Some were kind, some judged, but none of it mattered the way it once had. The day she moved to the ranch was calm. She packed her few belongings carefully. Her aunt hugged her tightly. You are stronger than you think, her aunt whispered. She believed that now. Life on the ranch was different, but it fit her. The mornings were quiet. The air was clean. The work was steady. She baked every day, filling the small house with warmth and familiar smells. Slowly, the kitchen changed. Shelves filled. The table became a place where two people sat, not one. He never asked her to speak more, never corrected her. When she wanted silence, he shared it. When she wanted to talk, he listened, like it mattered. Their marriage was simple. No loud gathering, no attention-seeking moments. just promises spoken clearly and honestly. He looked at her and said he would stand by her. She looked at him and said she would stay. And they did. Over time, she changed, not because she was forced, but because she felt safe. She laughed more. She spoke when she had something to say. She still loved quiet, and he never mistook that for weakness. The town noticed when she returned to the market sometimes, not as a girl standing alone behind a stall, but as a woman who knew her place in the world. She was still quiet, but she was no longer invisible. People spoke to her with more respect. Some asked for recipes, some asked about her life. She answered when she wished, smiled when she wished, and stayed silent when she wished. At night, she often stood outside the ranch house, looking at the wide sky. He stood beside her, not touching unless she reached first. "Are you happy?" he asked once. She thought carefully. Then she nodded. "Yes, I am." Her story did not end with noise or drama. It ended with warmth, with understanding, with a life built slowly, patiently, and honestly. She had once believed that being quiet meant being unseen. But she learned something better. Sometimes the softest presence fills a home the most.